All right, good morning, my fellow street and off-road shredders. Doing the obligatory Memorial Day weekend ride. If you don't get out and ride on Memorial Day weekend, what are you doing with your life? It is a beautiful day. I'm sure people are going to be cooking out and having barbecues and stuff, so it is also, therefore, a perfect day to ride. So in this vlog slash video, I am planning on doing a kind of a breakdown of my, let's call it limited, off-road experience. And then I'm also going to do a walk around of my bike to give you guys kind of a layout of what all I've done to this bike to make it a little more off-road capable. Kind of going through some of the mods and farkles that I've put on it over the past 2 or 3 years that I've had it, and kind of give you a breakdown of my thought process on setting this thing up. Now I will say, when I first got this bike, I was more in the mindset of ADV touring, like maybe a gravel fire road here and there, and so I did kind of set it up more for a touring aspect previously. And then since I kind of got bit by the off-road bug and I'd seen a lot of V-Strom riders actually do a lot more off-road with their bikes, I kind of wanted to soup it up a little bit more. And there's actually a guy that runs AppalachianADV.com. I first found him on Instagram. He and I have the exact same motorcycle, a 2005 V-Strom DL650. When I saw he had the bike, same color and everything, when I saw he had that bike and was doing some really cool off-roading adventure stuff with it, I was just like, dude, if he can soup his bike up and get it prepped, and he actually did in his blog article on that website, he actually did a breakdown of like things you need for off-road, and he applied it, you know, in general to every off-road bike, but also specifically to his bike because that's the platform he was working on. So he kind of gave me some ideas on everything I was going to need for my bike to get it a little more off-road capable. And then all that comes after that is my skills, but we'll see. So anyways, I've done off-road a little bit. I have attended March Moto Madness 2019. I did take the beginner ADV instructional course that the guy's name is Tom Asher. He did like an intro ADV course. We learned a lot of basics. We did some water crossings. We did a little bit of dab practice where you tried to weave in and out of cones, and he had cones set up and you'd like dab as you go along. I believe that was probably my first step into doing off-road, and I'll get into the tires a little bit later. I did have 80/20 tires on the bike, and being an ADV noob, indeed, I did drop my bike on that trip. There were a few things that happened to the bike that I'll get into a little bit later. When you have an ADV bike, you're gonna drop it. It's just the nature of the game. Even the most skilled riders in the world, they get stuck in a bad spot or something, they're gonna drop their bikes. I'll go over the mods that came with my bike, the mods that I was going to put on my bike, and that kind of thing. So combined with my off-road experience and the motorcycle itself, I feel like I'm gonna have a little better time the next go round. I'm planning a trip next month to do the Mississippi Trans-American Trail with my good friend Marshall, and originally we had planned to do the Mid-Atlantic Backcountry Discovery Route, but COVID-19 came along and we decided it was probably a little bit safer to do it closer to home. He lives in the Pennsylvania area, and we were planning this trip where we were going to meet like in Damascus or somewhere on one of those, like the second or third, beginning of the second or third leg of the Mabder, and then do the rest of the Mabder together. This big epic trip. And like from where I'm from, the whole trip, including the Mabder, would probably be 3,000 miles or so, from getting up there to doing the trail to heading back and everything. It was going to be like a massive road trip, massive off-road trip, just a big old adventure. Well, when COVID-19 came along and everything kind of started getting a little sketchy, we decided to modify our trip slightly. He's actually going to be in Tennessee for the summer, and so since he was going to be down here, we were thinking like, okay, well, we can just do the first, all the first legs of the Mabder together now. But with all the things going on with like hospitals and us doing, off-road potentially dangerous stuff, we were like, if that were to happen, we would want to be a little closer to home. So that's what led us to actually decide to do the MSTAT, as we're calling it, the Mississippi Trans-American Trail section. So it's going to be a little bit less intense of a trip. I don't know, it might be just as intense depending on what kind of sections, but we're definitely going to be dealing with less mountains and inclines. It's going to be a lot more flat, but there are some interesting parts in Mississippi to ride through that are pretty cool. So that's what the adventure is. The next adventure is going to be. We've talked about it and kind of done it, planned out our sections, got the GPX files and all that stuff. So we're really excited, and we've been talking about, doing a proper off-road trip for a while. So March Moto Madness was my first experience doing off-road, and then Labor Day weekend of last year, I got invited to go to an event that some of the guys that I met at March Moto Madness were hosting in eastern Kentucky, kind of in like coal country of eastern Kentucky. And so up there, I did drop my bike again. I was still running the 80/20 tires, and the first drop I had, my rear tire actually got packed up with mud, and I kind of whiskey throttled it a little bit and ran my bike to the left of the trail and almost up a tree. It was actually kind of impressive. I'll see if I can throw a pic in of it here. So I did drop it there, and then there was another section that had it was like kind of a super gravelly washed out area, and everybody ahead of me went to the right, kind of went up this berm and around and back down. And instead of doing that, I was like, I'll just stay to the middle, to the left. And there was clearly a rocky drop off, and like I just like went in and buried my front tire, and I couldn't go any further. It just dropped it. Now, to be clear, I never fell. I never personally fell, but I did drop my bike. Like literally both times when the bike went down, I just stepped off. Like, okay, bye bike, and there it goes. And I just stepped off. So I never fell, even though I did drop my bike. But you learn, and I learned that day in that simple lesson how to pick better lines. And that's a lot of what adventure riding is you want to take the easiest route possible, the most direct, and kind of, maybe not the most direct, but you want to take an easier path. And so reading your lines and kind of knowing the best places to go to get enough traction is important. Some of your best riders in the world could probably do it on street tires and be fine. But if you're traveling, like I'm wanting to do a lot more of, if you're actually like traveling and doing, trying to get from point A to point B and do some adventure on the way, it is advisable that you keep your bike together and running, and keep your body together and running. So you've got your hardcore ADV guys, and this is something I noticed at March Moto Madness last year. was that you had a lot of guys that had trailered their bikes in, whether they were BMW 1200 GS's or some KTM Husqvarna, like proper dual sports or two strokes. Like, you had a lot of guys that had trailered their bikes in. There were, I'm not gonna say very few, but there were clearly not as many that had ridden in there on their bikes and then ridden off-road while they were up there. And I was one of those people. Like, I rode my bike up there. I don't have a trailer. I can't like haul this thing and then ride it. So the other thing is if you happen to break your bike in an unfixable manner to where you can't, you know, limp it home, then you don't have a way home, and then that causes a lot of other issues. So my whole scope is to keep my bike in one piece, or to keep it in as much of one piece as possible, because it's my travel companion. It's not just like this clapped out machine that I just want to run the heck out of and just shred it to bits and then be like, okay, I'll just load it in the trailer and go home. Like, no, this is my main source of transportation, at least when I'm riding. And so I have to make sure that I can get this thing home and make sure it's gonna keep running. So any kind of like excessive hill climbs or water crossings that I might hydrolock my bike on, yeah, I'm gonna stay away from that. But at the same time, I want to get out in the mud and the dirt and the gravel and have some fun with this thing. Did they buy that winery? That thing's been closed for a while. But yeah, I'm just doing a little cruise today, and then I'm gonna actually get out, hopefully, and do a walk around. If it's not too hot and I don't melt, I'm gonna do a walk around of the bike. And I actually made a list of everything that my V-Strom came with, as well as all the Farkles that I've put on it over the years. So the Farkle is short for, and I had to look this up. I knew it stood for something, but it was just, I knew there was something funny people had put on it or whatever, but Farkle stands for fancy accessory, really cool, likely expensive. I have Farkled this bike a little bit, but it's all been in the pursuit of making this a comfortable touring / off-road capable machine. And so, yes, I have Farkled it. There are some things that I have Farkled it on that I probably shouldn't have, and things, I mean, you kind of learn as you go what you like, what you don't like, and what works and what doesn't work. So it's been a little bit of trial and error and a little bit of internet research to really find what I wanted to put into this bike and make it the best machine for me. Is it the best off-road machine? Not by a long shot. I know right now, like the top, whatever, the most popular machine is probably the KTM 790 Adventure. That thing just shreds trails. It's a really impressive bike. I've watched a lot of videos on it. It seems really cool. You know, if money wasn't an object, it'd be nice to maybe ride one of those and test it out. But for what I've done with this thing, it's been a good bike, and I kind of did a rough calculation a little while back of like all the money that I put into this thing and all that, and it still comes out under what a new showroom floor bike would cost. So, and it's got a lot of heart and soul into it that I've had my hands on it. I've built it. I've tweaked it. I've worked on it. Like that's how you really know your bike. Prime example for Long Way Round, when Charlie Borman and Ewan McGregor, they actually got to go to the BMW shops and tear a bike apart and put it back together. And I was like, dude, how invaluable is that? I mean, not just for any machine, of course, but for your specific bike that you're taking on a trip. Now, I haven't like gotten into the engine or anything and like adjusted piston heads or anything crazy like that, but a a lot of other pieces and hardware components and stuff on the bike, just kind of knowing how to fix things and kind of getting my mechanical knowledge to expand a little more has been super awesome. And so not only have I learned those mechanical skills, but I've learned them on my bike, and I'm able to kind of figure out specifically what might be wrong with my bike, if it starts running funny, or if there's some other issues going on. I feel like I've got a better scope on what I can do to kind of work on this thing and fix it. So that's, I feel like, very important. That's another thing. If you have a new bike and you're wrenching on it, you can void the warranty, and I'm sure it's got, you know, most bikes have some semblance of warranty on them. This thing I bought as is, and it's not super fancy. It doesn't have ABS, doesn't have traction control. There are less components to potentially mess up on it, and so I feel like I've got the kind of the best of both worlds. It's analog in that respect, where it doesn't have like super computers or whatever for like your traction and your rain mode and your all that, but it still has fuel injection, which is nice, and you don't have to worry about carburetors and like that kind of silly stuff. All right, here it is, the illustrious V-Strom. Just do a quick walk around, and then I'm going to get into kind of the breakdown on it and explain a few things. First, I'm going to tell you what came with it, and then I'm going to get into kind of the parts I replaced, the parts I upgraded, the parts I replaced after I had to replace the parts that I replaced, and then kind of go into each thing maybe a little bit more individually, and I've got stories on a couple of things too. So for starters, what this came with when I first picked it up from the shop, I think it had 38,000, close to 39,000 miles on it. And when I saw it, it actually had some things on it that I was pretty happy to see, and that I was probably eventually going to put on anyways. So that included the GV crash bars, which it took me a little bit to figure out that they were actually the GV brand. I had to kind of look and kind of figure out. They didn't really have like a label on them or anything. It already had this GV windscreen on it. If you can sort of see under there, it's got the MSTAT mount. So windshield and mount, that was probably, I don't know, about $200 or so. Crash bars are probably, I don't know, 200 or so. The next thing it had was a center stand, which I freaking love. It's been completely invaluable. I don't know that I could have another bike without a center stand. The next thing it came with was this top box, minus all these stickers, and it already had a mount that it's strapped into right there. But it's a Hepco and Becker, just a plasticky box, but it's good. I can throw junk in there. I hear people rage against top boxes, but it's so freaking handy. You just chunk stuff in there, and it's got a ton of room, and you can carry just about dang near anything. Oh yeah, levers. So the levers that came on it were some of these, those like fake carbon fiber stuff that actually matched the blinkers. You can see I think the original blinkers are the ones that like stick out to like here or something, but they did a little blinker upgrade there to make it, I don't know, more aerodynamic or something. We'll get into the tires a little bit later, but the tires that came on it, it was definitely set up for more of a touring machine. It was, I think the rear was like a Bridgestone, what is it, Trail Wings, like a Trail Wing 152 or something. And the front tire was a Metzler, I want to say it was an 883. It was almost like a 90-10 touring road tire. And then later on I found out that these were aftermarket, just the mirror extenders. Those are like SW Motec. And so that's what came on it. One of the first things that I upgraded on the V-Strom were the foot pegs. And this is the second set of foot pegs that I've had on these, on this thing. The stock pegs that came on it were too skinny,
And I noticed when I was riding for a little bit and I had the ball of my foot up on the peg, I had a pressure point. And even though I had like stiff motorcycle boots on, that pressure point was pressing into my foot and making my foot hurt. So the pegs were the first thing to go. So the pegs that I originally opted to put on these were these SW Motec. I don't remember what they're called, but they had like the rubber insert built into them. And you can see they're a little bit wider. And the one thing I really liked about these is that they actually have two mounting holes. They have one up top and one down lower where you could actually lower your peg by, it wasn't much, it was only like an inch or so, maybe even less than that. But it was just enough to give me a little bit of a leg extension to where it was a lot more comfortable to ride. And of course the wider footbed and the little spikies helped me grip a little bit better. The fatal flaw in these pegs though is not the peg itself. Like this metal part is fine. It's this, I don't know, it's some kind of aluminum material. It's definitely not the same material. You can even tell just by looking at it that this is a different material from the actual peg. So back to what I was talking about earlier, the first time I ever laid this bike down, this peg on the left-hand side dug into the ground and broke completely off from the mount. And as you can see, it's been bolted back together. This is what I was able to limp home on. I may unbolt it later and do a clip of actually what it looks like on the inside, but this aluminum adapter or whatever just sheared away and is a really significantly weak piece of material compared to this. So the advantage was being able to raise and lower, or in my case lower, since it was a little bit longer for my longer legs. But the disadvantage is it is a two-piece system to where this part is it's just junk metal. And so what I ended up doing was I think I emailed SW Motec. They said that, hey, Twisted Throttle is our American representative or our American outlet or whatever for pegs. So I contacted Twisted Throttle and I think we're gonna replace the exact same pegs for, it was a discount. I don't even know. It was maybe 15-20% discount. And I was like, so I could either buy another set of the same peg that I knew already had a weak spot in it, or upgrade to an IMS, in this case, IMS 80V2 foot peg. This is all one material. So it's bike and peg. That is it. And so when I ordered the new pegs, I sprung for it and I said, hey, it's worth it. That's where my feet are all the time. And I did go for the even wider. The ADV1s pop out to about right there, but the ADV2s have this little extra ledge. So you can kind of put your foot out a little further when you're not shifting and you're just on the bike, and you can kind of stretch out a little bit from the bike, and then also just have a little bit more peg leverage when you're off-road and stuff. So that's the story of the SW Motec pegs. If you never lay your bike down, they're fine. If you actually are doing off-roading, I do not recommend. So that's the peg saga. One other thing that, another piece of metal that I've broken off this bike was actually the shift peg. The same trip that I packed the rear tire up with mud and slid it down, it was the same trip but a different drop. I broke the peg off of the shift lever, and at the time I had to get home, or not to get home, but get back to the camp place. We had to get a locking set of lock pliers, like the mini lock pliers, and just clamp it on the bar. I'll insert a picture. And then when we actually got back to where we were staying, I had some people graciously help me out and actually do a little bolt and even put a little rubber shift thing on there to fix it up to get me home so I could actually shift. But when I got home, I ended up ordering a new part. I don't remember what the brand is. I think it's like something in my head makes me want to say Studebaker or Stud something. I don't know. I'll look it up and maybe add it in the notes. But ended up getting a folding shift lever. Hopefully, if I ever drop it again, that'll fold in and won't quite snap off and be a little more durable. It just looks a little more durable too. Like if you just compare, it's a little beefier, got like a little bit better better steel metal there. So little aftermarket peg upgrade there for the shift peg. A couple other like beginning upgrades that I did with this thing were I changed the light bulbs out. Like I think there's LED bulbs in the blinkers now, and then the main headlights are incandescent, and I think they're like a Phillips brand or something, but you can see they kind of have a blue tint. I thought that was cool, so I think it was like 20 bucks or something for a pair, so I put the blue lights in them, and they're a lot brighter too, so a lot more visibility and stuff at night. The next thing I did, and this is a company that I highly recommend, was, you can see it, is this fork brace. Now this is a company called Adventure Tech LLC. They make a lot of V-Strom accessories and upgrades, and that fork brace, I'd read online that was like a lot of things, the first things that people put on their V-Stroms is that when this thing gets up to highway speed, you have a little bit of wobble in the suspension, and this just locks your forks together to where it's the whole wheel going up and down linear with the shock instead of it kind of having a little bit of wobble. So it just kind of locks the forks together, and I could tell the handling was a lot better after I put that on. And this isn't all in order, but one of the next things I got from Adventure Tech, and we'll go tip to butt, is this LED light bar. I think with the bar and the lights, it was maybe 150 bucks for the whole system, and I've got it wired in with another accessory that I'll show y'all here in a minute. But the option on these LED lights was to have a wide beam and like more of a spotlight beam. And originally I wanted 2 spotlights, and I thought, that'll work. You got to choose either or. So the wide beams are more for like daily driving, to where you've got a wider light and people can actually see you coming, just as a safety accessory. The spot is obviously to see further down the road at night. Well, when I ordered it, he called me and said that they were out of the spots, because I was like wanting to see like super distance or whatever. They were out of the spotlights. So what he just ended up shipping me was a wide beam and 1 spotlight. And I got to thinking about it, and it actually works out better, and I'm actually really happy that it turned out this way, is that the wide beam is on the left-hand side. I mounted it that way to where when the oncoming traffic, they're more likely to see like a wider beam of light. And then on the right side, I've got the spot, so actually I can actually see further down the road. And the advantage of this is that I've actually can see street signs a little bit better. Like when I'm on the interstate and highway signs and stuff, I can see the signs further from a distance because I've got this spot on the right-hand side, and I can just look down and see my exit like a lot sooner and see road names and that kind of stuff. So it actually turned out well, and I'm not going to change it back. But originally he said, hey, run this one for a little bit. Once we get those back in stock, just let me know. And I just never contacted him back. Like it actually worked out fine. I'm really happy I did that. So just a little kind of a tech tip, I guess. One of the next things that I got from Adventure Tech was the foot pad extender, which I highly recommend for any bike. This thing you can plant this bike anywhere. You can plant any bike anywhere. So I highly recommend getting one of those. All their stuff's like billet aluminum. It's like super high quality stuff. Let's go into some of my other initial accessories here. The first thing that absolutely went, or one of the first few things, was the hand guards. The guards that came on it were the V-Strom like plastic hand guards, to where like if a rock came or bugs or whatever, and maybe wind protection, I guess, but it was all plastic. So when I was a beginner rider, I'd gone over to somebody's house and parked on their little sidewalk running in front of their house, and I had pulled in straight, and when I went to go back out, I thought I was going to be able to walk my bike backwards and then start it up and get on out of there. The edge of the sidewalk caught me, and I just like froze it for a second, and then subsequently dropped my bike. Real sad. So anyways, I was like, oh man, this is embarrassing. I dropped my bike, picked my bike up, and the bike wouldn't start. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've broken this thing. Well, as with all things V-Strom, sometimes you just have to know. I don't know if y'all can see this, but this little plug right here is the clutch starting system. So you have to pull the clutch in to start the V-Stroms. I think on the SV650s as well. It's a safety feature, a bit of an annoyance. But what had happened is that plastic handguard, I'd landed on it and it just pressed that plastic in and it knocked that thing loose to where I had to sit there for 5 or 10 minutes I was looking over everything, and finally I was like, well, that doesn't look right. That came unplugged. And so after that, I was like, all right, Barkbuster's in the mail. And so now with the aluminum backing, that won't happen again. Who knows, you know, something crazy might happen and that might pop out again. But it was originally those plastic handguards that actually pushed that little clutch tripwire out of place, and that's what prompted me to actually get the full-on aluminum back Barkbusters. So with these, I did order the aluminum backing, and then I ordered actually 2 sets of Barkbusters. So this set is like the off-road, it's like the variable positioning system, yeah, the VPS, variable positioning system, to where you can get a little more air or whatever. The other ones I ordered were the Storm Guards, which are more of like a full hand coverage, and they're supposed to, you know, resist like the weather elements a little bit better. And so they're black, and actually I think when I dropped it in at March Moto Madness, that's what I had on it. So that one's got a bunch of scratches on it, but yeah. So in the summer I run these. In the winter and fall, when I want more wind protection, I run the black Storm ones. So, and then here you can just a little walk around. You can kind of see my little stripes. This was actually on a fire trail that I dropped it. The first full, you know, actual quote unquote laying it down, I was only going about 20 or so, but it broke the foot peg, scratched all that up. And so anyways, that's the adventure of the first drop. So that was my reasoning for the pegs and the guards. Something as far as, like I said, I set it up originally kind of for a touring type of riding. And one thing too, I'm a little bit taller, and so I opted to get one of these screen extenders. And even when I have the MSTAT lowered, when I'm off-road and kind of jump on highway or whatever, just having this splitter to split the air, it keeps me from getting this like bobblehead motion from the air hitting the top of my head and like right in my helmet. Previously this was sitting at about eye level, and I was just getting all this head wobble, it was just knocking my head loose, and I had like a headache and like a crick in my neck after riding like that for a little bit. So that was the next thing, just as far as the little bit of better wind protection there. Mirrors, like I said, the mirror extenders came on it. I had the stock mirrors on. I really did like the stock mirrors. They were big square things, and so I opted for the double takes, which you can fold in or fold in if you want to, or don't, and if you drop it, they knock out of place. You bend them right back in place. You got your ram mounts here that help with that. Something else with comfort, see if I can find it, there we go, are these, I'll walk around to the other side. The rocks risers. I did want a little bit of a rise, like when I'm standing up, I'm a tall guy and I just needed a little bit more reach. Looking back, I probably would have gone with the ones that actually have they've got like dampers in them for vibration reduction. I'm not going to upgrade to those or anything, but these work fine. But having that extra vibration would have been nice, but I didn't necessarily think that was something I absolutely had to have. So I just kind of held off on getting that. But yeah, the extra reach is helpful. It kind of keeps you from getting your shoulders cramped up as much, so that's good. The next thing, and this is kind of a quote-unquote performance mod, and I got these at about the same time, is I do have a Two Brothers M2 exhaust. You can kind of see it down in there. I'm not going to take the box off for now, but yeah, the biggest thing with the Two Brothers exhaust was the weight savings. The stock V-Strom exhaust system is insanely heavy, and it's all one piece. So with the aftermarket, it's like a 3/4 design. This is the original header pipe, and then you've got this connector that goes to here, and then you've got this, and then you've got the muffler. So it's like almost like a 4-piece system kind of thing. But the weight savings is incredible just by using that and not having the stock exhaust on there. I mean, I feel like exhausts are kind of That's what everybody does to their bikes, but it was kind of something I was like, man, I want a loud pipe, and it's awesome. I love it. It's super light and makes a good growl, and it really gets the V-twin sound growling out of there. At the same time, or about the same time, I had ordered the RaveTech skid plate, and I think that came from overseas. It came from I think it was about 6 weeks for delivery or something, but highly recommended. I did see some pieces that were all one welded spot, or all one welded piece. With this, it actually gives it a little more give. So if you happen to crack it on a log or something, you're less likely to just crack the entire thing and be able to just break free from the bolts here. I believe it actually came assembled. I've seen where sometimes they'll send them just the plates or whatever. I think it came assembled, but what I ended up doing was going around with each of these and tightening them up with the hex keys and stuff. So with the exhaust and the skid plate, I mounted those at the same time. The V-Stroms are infamous for having a lot of susceptible parts up here to the front. So you've got your header pipe and you've got your oil filter right here. Even if I wasn't riding this thing off-road, I would still want a skid plate, because if you don't have that, one wayward rock from the front tire could just bullet through this thing and just leak all your oil out. So kind of reasoning for that. It is a V-Strom. It's not like I'm like souping this thing up with like a super cool engine or whatever, but I do want to save money where I can. Tip, there are a lot of motorcycle shops that have eBay as one of their like marketplaces. Like they might sell on Amazon or directly off their website or off of eBay. It's just another marketplace. And so what happened was, and I was like long term, I was like, hey, I'll save up and I'll get an exhaust someday for the bike. One of those stores actually had it on their on the eBay website. And at the time, eBay had a very rare, they don't do it that often, but they'll have either like a 15% or a 20% off coupon or promo code. And that's what I ended up doing. Like I didn't want to spend the money at the time, but it ended up, I got a 20% coupon and got this this Two Brothers M2 exhaust for 20% off. So, I mean, just a pro tip, looking around for parts, and I mean even motorcycle parts or other things, wait till eBay has a 20% off sale and then see if you can't find what you're looking for on there. So good piece of advice. For speed and weight reasons, I've seen people take the rear foot pegs off and you can just unbolt them there. Two things. Number one, I did keep this on for kind of a little bit of crash protection to keep it from bending up my pipe if I laid it down. The other thing is when I actually got the Happy Trails Products rack, the way it mounts in is actually through the brake line there. So you actually needed that little piece. You probably could have gotten a smaller bolt or something, but the way it works incorporated with the rear foot pegs. Speaking of Happy Trails Products, highway pegs. Again, touring aspect. I did end up putting these flip down highway pegs. They're just bolted to the GV crash bars. They're awesome, they're comfortable. One design flaw I did see is that this bottom pin is just riveted. I have lost this peg before, actually on the other side. And so what I ended up doing was ordering a new peg and then running a nut and bolt through there to actually hold that a little more steady. I think the pegs came in a 2-pack, so I'm just kind of waiting for that one to break off. And if it happens to, then I've got another one I can replace it with. So if it happens to snap free, I think I lost this on I-40 somewhere. So if you see my peg, don't worry about returning it. But anyways, good little highway aspect. The other thing that this does is that I've got a aftermarket horn. Now this thing is kind of precarious because this is the wiring and it kind of goes out front. We actually had to bolt the aftermarket horn to the Happy Trails foot peg. So I thought about taking the foot pegs off for off-road capabilities, but that would mean getting rid of my horn. This would save some weight if I removed it, but that horn is awesome. I got it from Harbor Freight. It's a Wolo bad boy brand. I don't know. It's some wacky brand, but it is so freaking loud. And from somebody that's also had a minivan almost sideswipe me before, and I laid on the horn and she jerked her wheel to the right to get away from me. definitely worth it. Love that safety aspect of it. So the Wolo horn, check it out. Harbor Freight, you can get coupons for there all the time. And that's another thing, I'll say this about Harbor Freight, just as far as working on the bike and tools and Allen wrenches and all that stuff, you can't freaking beat Harbor Freight. They have gotten more business from me since I bought this motorcycle. I'll get into a little bit more about Harbor Freight here in just a second. So that being said, I did at one time buy the Harbor Freight trickle charger. I think it's about 24 bucks in their store. Their electronics, it's that Syntec brand, are not as reliable as your other products. I was like, oh, I'll just get it for cheap, use a coupon on it, whatever. I bought it, it worked for maybe a year or something, and it died. And so after that, I was like, I'm not wasting my time with this. I'm just gonna order an actual battery tender brand. Now, fun fact, on the battery tender brand, you've got your plus and your minus here. On the Harbor Freight, it's actually opposite. The plus is on this side and the minus is on that side. So you can't use the same pigtail with a different charger. Another thing about the battery tender battery charger is you can get, I think it's an 18-foot extension cord, and that thing is awesome. Like, I can have the entire charger inside my apartment and the plug-in and have it run out to my bike in front. I live on a ground floor, but you can do that without having to run like a full-size extension cord out there and have your charger just out there for somebody to steal, you know, if they so please. So just some tips on that. Just go ahead and get the battery tender, get the extension cord if you're in a place that you might have to stretch a little bit to get some power, but just a good idea for that. So while we're down here, Airhawk. My first big ride that I'd ever done, I think it was maybe 200 miles in a day. I'd ridden about 100 miles to get to like this park area, and I'd hiked around for a bit and then went 200 miles home, and it was in the middle of summer. And this V-Strom seat is just straight hot vinyl. It is not comfortable to sit on. And after that trip, I was like, something's got to go. And I ended up ordering the Airhawk seat that night. And this thing, it gets you off the seat enough to give you some airflow. And then it is, you know, semi-cushiony too. But highly recommend this. And so this has not left the bike. And yeah, highly recommend that for anybody, again, touring aspect. Get you an Airhawk, you won't regret it. They're about $100 or so, worth every penny in my opinion. I mean, you can go with your seat concept seats and like all that, like super expensive, you know, $400, $500 seat, $100 air pad for your butt, well worth it. Highly recommended. So I can't remember exactly which this one was. I think this was a small, but it was originally designed for a cruiser bike. But with the way the V-Strom, the back seat kind of flares a little bit, it actually fits perfect. If you can see kind of the top view, it's just enough to kind of get over the edges and not to have too much of an overhang. One of the next things I put on, or one of the very first things too, was the Tech Spec grip tape pad. So you've got this panel, this plastic panel that pops off. There's a stick that goes there, stick that goes there, and then your kind of buckle guard right there. And so that's like, I think 90 bucks for a full like custom cut V-Strom kit. Yeah, worth it. Go ahead and get it. Moving around, we talked about the top box, and this is kind of helping me remember all the stickers I put on it, and my Tail the Dragon, and all some of the stuff that I put on. With the luggage system, these are the Mule Pack panniers. My reasoning for getting these, I know a lot of people use soft luggage, and like it's like the soft versus hard. Like hard luggage you can lock, which I've done with some ABUS locks. You can lock, but people say, you know, it's more dangerous off-road because if you get your leg caught underneath or something, it's gonna be a bad time. And that's why people opt for soft luggage. This is like roto-molded plastic, and it's made out of the same stuff that like construction pylons and barrels and kayaks and stuff are made out of. It's just a guy, I think he's in North Carolina or Virginia somewhere, and he's made these things, and he made them to fit the Happy Trails Products SU racks, which is the rack that I ordered for it. So I ordered the rack separate, ordered the Mule Packs from him, and they're flexible, but they're still lockable. So I might switch to soft luggage eventually, but I really like these, just the concept of them and just kind of the ingenuity of them. Check them out. I think they're way underrated for the, I don't know if they've got as much popularity necessarily. Like usually you see like your hardcore aluminum panniers or the ones that came with like the BMW bikes or whatever. And then you've got like your Wolfman packs, which I've got a Wolfman like luggage duffel bag. But as far as side racks go, look this guy up. He's really got an amazing product. I've been really impressed with it. They're water resistant. There's a rubber seal on the inside, so they're really cool. Something else, a little modular mod that I did is that, you may have seen this on some bikes before too, but I'm gonna show you anyways. This is a tool tube that traditionally has been used to set on a tractor or mount on a tractor. And I have mounted it on the inside of my luggage rack here, and it holds about 1 liter of gasoline. And filling this thing up is a pain because you will inevitably spill gas on your hands. But if you're off-road and kind of out in the country a little bit, or if you're just riding home and don't want to stop and you've only got 30 or 40 miles to get home, this will at least give you a good 10 or 15 more miles. So I have done that before, and just a little extra security, and I just keep it mounted right there. And it's really cool. This tube was like $5 on like Agro Supply. It's like an agriculture supply website or something, and now I get all their magazines and stuff. It's sort of like Tractor Supply. These are like $5 or $10. There's companies selling these things online for $30, $40 or something, some ridiculous price. I think it was the shipping was like $8 or $9, and it was more expensive than the piece itself. So take that for what it's worth. Highly recommended. $5, spend the shipping. It's like $15 total. Find some hardware, bolt it on. Good little product. What I have been working on in the past, I think I referred to my other video about the wrenching and stuff that I've been doing on this bike, is I have put a Race Tech replacement front end and a Race Tech rear shock in. It's the gold valve kit, as well as some upgraded springs. The stock springs are not sufficient for a 200-pound guy. Just this front suspension has been amazing since I've gotten it fixed, gotten it upgraded. So it's a valve kit, it's a spring, and you can get online and read all about it. This was the cheapest option for me. I didn't want to do like a full front fork rebuild or replacement necessarily, but doing the gold valves and the springs, this wasn't a big deal. I actually took it to a mechanic for him to actually do it. I think I've actually seen maybe Mainstream Moto or somebody do this on their page. He did a front fork replacement. I don't think he did the gold valves or anything, but he did a front fork replacement with some maybe progressive springs. These are just straight rate springs, but the gold valve is supposed to help compensate for a little bit of that. And this is supposed to help some traction off-road, and I can definitely tell just even having the stiffer springs in there has been amazing. The rear shock, I'll tell you this, the rear shock and spring replacement, on Racetech's website, it says some shocks are not rebuildable, and this V-Strom is a non-rebuildable rear shock. So there's a way they hack it by like putting a pressure valve and like this specialized like nitrogen filler nut in there, and like all it's crazy. Nitrogen filler bolt. It was a pain. My mechanic struggled with it. He's a good guy, and he really does know his stuff, but he said he'd never worked with a shock like this before, and it was like a whole thing just trying to get it fixed. My advice is, if you're looking at a Racetech rear suspension for a V-Strom, I think the brand is actually Progressive. You buy that replacement spring, because getting this thing, it's the original shock, but it's just got like it's got a rear shock gold valve kit, and it's got an aftermarket e-box spring and some like collar adapters to make it all fit in there. But the suspension, yeah, you're better off just buying a replacement shock rather than trying to upgrade that one. It was just so much hassle and such a headache that I wouldn't recommend doing that. Just go out and buy another spring. I think it might cost you a couple $100 more to just get a brand new spring or a brand new shock and spring. But yeah, if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't have gone Racetech, just because it's such a process to get that built. So just a little piece of advice. Last couple of things. I do have a rad guard on here, radiator guard. I bought this when I was working on the suspension and stuff, getting it mounted back up, and I was like, if you're gonna go off-road, you need to go off-road. So I went ahead and got a radiator guard. Previously, I had not ridden with one of these, and so I ended up getting one finally, because a rock through the radiator can make you have a not very good time. All right, under the seat, last couple of things. This bike did come with somebody had mounted an aftermarket 12-volt car battery, like the little 12-volt plug-ins right here. And recently I have upgraded that to an actual quad lock charging system. For phone mounts, I did actually originally have one of the Ram mount X-Wings. I may do a separate breakaway video on that to show why I switched to quad lock. But yeah, definitely a better system. And this is their actual proprietary charger that bolts into the actual mount. So the whole thing is mounted on a quad lock, or a Ram mount rather. But the charger and all that is all integrated, so it's a lot less wires. I'm then wiring my Garmin GPS all back to the battery. I think this is the quad lock charger. There's a company called Eastern Beaver that is this wiring harness down through here. You can kind of see the fuse and the other components of the wires. I mean, it's probably hard to see, but that's what's in there. It's called Eastern Beaver. Awesome if you're wanting to do your own wiring. It's given me some kind of hands-on wiring skills and stuff. And then I also have a Procom fuel controller. So the idea of this is, if you put an aftermarket exhaust on and you put a K&N high flow air filter in, which I have, is that this helps adjust the fuel that's not getting enough. There's not enough fuel and there's too much air flowing through your system. And so most cases people would just get an actual like full-on programmable fuel controller. But this is kind of the cheap option. It was about $100 or so, and I can see a difference in it. I'm not so precise that I have to have the maximum fuel efficiency or the maximum horsepower or whatever. And this seems to just bypass that just a little bit to make the flow good enough between the air filter and the exhaust that it adds just enough fuel in to where it's not gonna air itself out or anything. Last thing I think for today, and I might forget some stuff and I might go back and do it a little bit later, is this battery. When I bought the bike, I bought it as is, no warranty or shop warranty or anything. It's an old bike. I'll just buy it as is. Left the showroom, trailered it home, and within a few days the battery had died, and they sold me a bike with a dead battery because it had been sitting for a while and it had run out. So I called the dealer and I'm like, hey, battery's dead. And at the time I was a new motorcyclist and I didn't really know much about, what I needed to look for or whatever. I told him, I was like, the battery's died. And he's like, all right, go and look up Yuasa. Yuasa's the brand that we recommend. And like, they're supposed to be these awesome batteries. And I think it was like an $80 or $90 battery. Bought one and it was fully dead within a year. Do not recommend the Yuasa batteries. They're expensive and they do not last. What I ended up getting instead, and this one's been going for at least 2 years, maybe a little bit longer, is this Chrome Pro rechargeable battery. I'm not even sure. I'll have to look that up and give you guys a heads up on that. It's got a voltage and a number of days that it's been running. This battery has been awesome. It was like $35 on Amazon. So buy smarter, not harder. I don't know if that's a saying, but it is now. But yeah, this battery's been awesome. You can get your voltage, you can tell what it is, and be able to get going when you try to start your engine. I mean, it's gone dead a couple of times and I've had to hook it up to the trickle charger a few times, but it didn't completely die out. So just as a quick note on that, if you take it to AutoZone and you ask them to do a load charge, basically you can take a fully charged battery in and it'll register and they're like, all right, your battery's fully charged. Under a load charge, when they test it, that's like your cranking power. They tried to crank that Yuasa battery and it just zapped the battery straight down. And it wouldn't even crank. So you can have a fully charged battery, but the load charge is what matters in actually cranking your engine. So even though I had a fully charged battery, when they put a load on it and load tested it, it just zapped it. And was completely dead. So that's when I actually ended up ordering and replacing the full-on battery with this one. This battery's been awesome. So save your money and check one of these out. It's a pretty cool system. You can just press the button. It's got this built-in like battery charge. You can see what your charge is at and stuff. Pretty handy. One other thing, Galfer brakes, I got those from Adventure Tech. They're the extended brake line. So with the bar risers, I actually did get the extended lines. I think they're maybe 1 or 2 inches longer, just to give you a little bit of a cushion there. And so this is the Galfer brake company stainless steel lines. I will say, I don't think I will ever have a bike that doesn't have these or some version of stainless steel lines on them. Just the braking power difference, you can full on feel it. It's not like I'm gonna upgrade the brakes and like they're a little better. Like, you can definitely tell there's a major difference in your stopping and braking power. New pads, EBC brake pads, but the lines are what makes a difference, because you can feel the tension when you pull the brakes, and it's got a lot more pull on it, and so it's definitely a better braking system. And yeah, that's something I wish I would have done years ago. And it's not too expensive. I can't remember, it was maybe $150 for pads and lines, and it's not that hard to do if you've ever drained your brake lines before. But I don't know, watch some YouTube videos and figure out how to do it yourself too. But yeah, highly recommended stainless steel brake lines. Last thing on the list, tires. Right here we have the Tractionator GPS tires by Motaz. When I first got the tires, it was like Bridgestone TW152 on the back or something, and then on the front it had like a Metzler 883. When I replaced the tires for the first time, I ended up getting some Metzler Tourance 80/20 tires, and that's what I ran when I was doing off-road for the first time, and they were not meant for that. So I have now opted for a 50/50 tire. Here's the front. You can see it's got a little more bite and tread to it, and then the rear has your center strip for some good highway miles there, and then you've got your bigger lugs on the side to be able to dig in a little bit better. I think for my type of riding that I've done and am going to do in the future, this is going to be probably the best option for me. Usually I have to drive to the mountains or somewhere in order to get to some hard packed dirt and some I don't know, like March Moto Madness is probably 370 miles from me, or 350, somewhere in there. March Moto Madness is probably 350 miles from me. I'm going to be doing interstate and highway all the way up there. So I want a smooth center strip ride. But when I get up there, I want to tear it up and be able to grip in. So I think full on the 50/50 is going to be the best option for me. Like I said, the 80/20s, they're okay. But when you're on gravel and fire roads and stuff, they're just not going to cut it. So yeah. Gonna try out these 50/50s, and hopefully I'll enjoy them quite a bit, and probably give a review after I've kind of burned them up a little bit more. But yeah, the tires and suspension have been the biggest parts of this bike that I've upgraded in the past few months when I've been wrenching. Can you do it one-handed? Oh yeah, we can. There we go. Got the seat back on. So that is the full walk around of the V-Strom. All the upgrades and parts that I've put on it, all the accessories and farkles. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed showing it to you. Man, I had to make a list. Like, I had a note card and wrote everything down. I was like, all right, I'm gonna put all the before stuff on one side and all the after stuff on the other side. Once I did that, I almost ran out of room on the note card. And so anyways, I've done a lot to the bike, and I've done put a lot of stuff on it, put a lot of thought into it about what I want it to be capable of. So hope you guys have enjoyed. We'll see you later.